Warriors fans, today feels like one of those nights where every possession seems heavier, every rotation feels like it matters just a little more, and every matchup looks like it could tilt the rhythm of the entire game. As this home stretch continues, the team finally walks into a meeting that feels like a real checkpoint in the season. The Rockets arrive shorthanded, and even queuing up the scouting report already shows how different the matchup becomes without several of their usual pieces on the floor. Kevin Durant being unavailable completely shifts the identity of their offense. And without him setting the scoring pace, the Rockets lose that anchor who usually forces defenses to stay glued to him at every moment. On top of that, they miss important supporting players who normally give them extra length, extra rebounds, and more physicality in the paint. When a team loses multiple rotation pieces, especially bigger bodies, the geometry of the game naturally changes, and for the Warriors that actually opens up some possibilities that were tricky in earlier matchups. Even with the absences, Houston still relies heavily on the physicality of Alperen Sengun, and that is where the night becomes a legitimate challenge for Quentin Post. Every time the Warriors face a front court with size, Post steps into a spotlight he cannot really run from. Tonight, he needs to stretch the defense, pull Sengun away from the interior, and create those pockets of space that the Warriors' ball handlers thrive in. It sounds simple on paper, but it requires patience, precision, and perfect timing, especially when the opponent tries to cover up its injuries by collapsing into the paint and daring shooters to win the game from the perimeter. If Post starts well, if he hits those early jumpers or forces Sengun to chase him out near the arc, it completely reshapes how the Rockets must play defense. And that could be the spark that lets players like Stephen Curry, Jimmy, Draymond, Moses Moody, and Brandon Podziemski start dictating the tempo instead of reacting to it. The availability situation on the Warriors' side is still uncomfortable. Draymond is a game-time call. Alex Tue probably will not appear. Al Horford remains sidelined. Jonathan Kuminga is not returning tonight, and there is still silence about DeAnthony Melton. That uncertainty forces the team into another night of risky rotations and unpredictable combinations. But sometimes those moments create unexpected chemistry because everyone on the floor knows they must carry a little more weight. What matters most is the start. If Golden State comes out sharp, if they control the pace early, this matchup leans heavily in their favor. But if they hesitate, if they allow Houston to feel comfortable despite missing their stars, the night becomes a dogfight that never should have been. The recent 10-game stretch does bring a bit of frustration. Golden State split it down the middle with 5 wins and 5 losses, while Houston walked out with 8 victories and only 2 defeats. Numbers written out like that tell the story clearly. One team has been moving upward, the other tried to steady the ship. But the Rockets without Kevin Durant are simply not the same threat. And without their primary scorer, they lose the gravitational pull that usually bends opposing defenses. That puts the spotlight right back on Stephen Curry, because in games like this, his influence always determines the rhythm. Reed Shepherd will likely be the first to try to track him around screens. But the real question is what happens when Amen Thompson jumps in and takes that matchup again. Thompson's defense on Curry in that electrifying playoff series is still fresh in everyone's memory. Especially that deciding Game 7, when Thompson stuck to Curry so tightly it looked like he was attached to him by a rope. At moments, he shadowed Curry so closely that you could practically feel the pressure through the screen, and Curry had to work for every inch of breathing room. Even then, even with that suffocating coverage, Curry still found ways to get his shots up because that is simply who he is. The most gifted shooter the game has ever seen, capable of bending defenders to his will even on off nights. But the Warriors had to burn energy and creativity just to free him up. If Houston tries to replicate that level of pressure again, Golden State must be far more prepared than they were in those playoffs. Off-ball screens must be smarter, cuts must be sharper, and spacing must be consistent. If Curry is forced to fight for every touch, the game tightens. If they manage to get him clean looks early, it opens the entire floor. And then there is the layer of the so-called tournament atmosphere hanging over this matchup. Some fans buy into the concept more every season. Others still look at these early season tournaments like an experiment the league is trying to shape into something meaningful. There is no denying why it exists. The league wants the casual audience to engage before the spotlight naturally shifts toward Christmas Day, the date everyone recognizes as the unofficial starting gun of the NBA's true intensity. Other sports deal with the same issue. Baseball drifts quietly through its first months before Memorial Day. Basketball has the same struggle. The league tries to spark interest, tries to create urgency, tries to build emotional stakes, but it feels different for every fan. Last night's tournament game between Philadelphia and Orlando was a good example of that odd feeling. The court design catching your eye immediately, bright and loud, but the game itself still carried that familiar rhythm of an early season matchup. It did not feel like a championship preview. It did not feel like a game loaded with meaning. It felt like a November night basketball game, only dressed up in more colorful clothing. The league wants something similar to what other sports do with mid-season cups, but the emotion behind those traditions is not created overnight. Fans do not form attachments because a court is painted a different way or because a label is attached to a Tuesday game. Emotion comes from legacy, from years of moments stacking on top of each other. And that is the part the NBA has not quite captured yet. Still, opinions vary. Some fans love the idea, some reject it completely, and others simply watch the game the same way they always do. What matters tonight for Golden State is far more basic than any tournament storyline. This team needs rhythm. It needs consistency. It needs to prove it can take advantage of an opponent missing key pieces instead of letting them hang around long enough to make the fourth quarter stressful. And with so many players still out on the Warriors' side, this becomes a test of focus rather than star power. If they play with urgency from the opening tip, they take control. If they wait for the second half to wake up, Houston's young roster will pounce on every mistake. Speaking of focus, the conversation around potential trades has been growing louder than usual, and a lot of that comes from the inconsistencies created by injuries and unpredictable availability. Every season reaches a point where fans start imagining different combinations, different pieces, different roles that could help stabilize the team. A few days ago, the idea of bringing in KERR were popped up again in the comments, and the timing of that suggestion reflects how much Golden State still needs a reliable presence in the middle. Whereas talented, energetic, and still growing into what he can eventually become, and there is something intriguing about a young center who rebounds well and already understands vertical spacing. But the issue is not his talent. The issue is how tightly the Miami organization guards its developing players. Miami does not operate like teams that rely only on draft positions or high-profile prospects. They operate like a machine that builds players from the ground up. Over the years, they have turned late picks into essential contributors, developed role players into stars, and pushed relatively unknown prospects into meaningful positions. Their roster quietly shows how efficient their system is because they have multiple players scoring in double digits, even without a traditional superstar dominating possessions. Where being their leading rebounder only reinforces how invested they are in him. He is young, he fits their identity, and he is currently on a rookie contract, which is exactly the type of financial flexibility the franchise values as it builds towards long-term plans. That alone makes a trade nearly impossible at this stage. When talking about Miami, everything eventually circles back to Pat Riley. For 3 decades, he has shaped the team into one of the most consistent organizations in professional sports. He has never been afraid to shake things up, but he always moves with purpose. His decisions are calculated, not desperate. So when fans speculate about him giving up a promising young center who fits the Heat model perfectly, it simply does not line up with how Riley has operated for years. What does make more sense is the possibility, however distant, of Miami eventually moving a bigger contract if it opens room for another superstar pursuit down the line. Bam Adebayo's name naturally enters that conversation because he is an all-star, he commands significant salary, and he does not always match the next phase of Miami's vision. It sounds bold, almost unrealistic, but when you consider how Miami has built its identity around adaptability, the possibility cannot be dismissed entirely. Adebayo's defensive versatility and strength in the paint would immediately reshape the Warriors' frontcourt, especially if they continue leaning towards smaller lineups that rely on switching and speed. Golden State has always been at its best when it mixes skill with chaos. And a center who can anchor the defense while still handling the physicality of bigger matchups would be a massive upgrade. The only issue is timing. Nothing can happen until certain players become trade eligible, Jonathan Kuminga included, and that will only be an option deeper into January. While fans debate these possible moves, the reality is that Golden State cannot afford to leap ahead mentally. The season is too long, the standings too tight, and the roster too incomplete to start focusing on imaginary scenarios. Trades only matter if the team positions itself properly before then. They need momentum, chemistry, and a clearer identity. Right now, they're fighting to stay afloat while missing key contributors, and that makes every game an opportunity to build rhythm. Even when facing opponents missing half their rotation, the league punishes any team that assumes a victory before earning it. Houston is the perfect example of that. Despite injuries and inconsistency, they remain competitive because their young roster plays with energy and confidence. They guard aggressively, they rebound well, and they do not hesitate to push the ball in transition. Without Durant, their offense becomes more balanced, sometimes even unpredictable, because multiple players share the scoring responsibility instead of funneling possessions into one superstar. That can be dangerous in a different way. A team missing its best player sometimes comes out swinging because everyone else feels the need to contribute. Golden State knows that feeling themselves, especially on nights when Wardell Curry has to battle through defensive pressure just to find room to breathe. Curry's role tonight extends beyond scoring. He has to control the rhythm, uplift younger teammates, and guide the offense into calm, fluid possessions instead of the rushed, chaotic sequences that have caused trouble in recent games. When the Warriors rush, they turn the ball over. When they settle into the game's natural pace, their movement becomes almost hypnotic. The team has always relied on flow, and without that flow, everything becomes harder. Houston will definitely try to disrupt that rhythm early, and if the Warriors fall into a sloppy start, they risk giving the Rockets confidence that they should never have been allowed to feel. Draymond's uncertain status adds another layer of unpredictability. His presence goes far beyond defense. He orchestrates the offense, dictates communication, and sets the emotional tone. When he is unavailable, the Warriors lose not just a defender, but the engine of their entire structure. Replacing that influence is impossible. Sharing it becomes necessary. Moody, Podziemski, and the supporting cast must make quicker decisions, more assertive passes, and stronger defensive rotations to fill the gaps Draymond usually covers instinctively. Even with all these concerns, the Warriors still have the talent to seize control of the night. They have veterans who understand the stakes, young players eager to prove themselves, and a superstar who can torch defenses even when being guarded tightly. The challenge is applying all of that from the opening minutes instead of waiting until late in the game. Too many times this season, they have allowed opponents to hang around. Too many times they've played with urgency only when the clock threatens them. That habit cannot continue. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. Whispers are swirling through the corridors of the NBA world, and Golden State Warriors fans are bracing themselves for what could be one of the most shocking stories of the season. Sources close to the team suggest that a rift has quietly emerged between Steve Kerr and one of his key players, sparking speculation about the future of a relationship that once seemed unshakable. Kerr, usually the picture of calm and diplomacy, reportedly delivered a blunt message that has left teammates and insiders talking. "Not playing with me anymore." The cryptic remark has ignited a wildfire of questions, ranging from tactical disagreements to deeper personality clashes behind closed doors. According to insiders, the tension did not arise overnight. Several practices and pre-game sessions have reportedly been marked by subtle signs of discord. Strategic debates that turned into heated discussions, sideline interactions that carried an unusual stiffness, and locker room exchanges that teammates describe as tense but polite. While the specifics remain under wraps, the rumor mill suggests that the player in question might be re-evaluating his role with the Warriors, weighing the allure of the Bay Area against a potential move elsewhere. Fans have taken to social media, dissecting every press conference, every cryptic tweet, and every sideline gesture. Some argue that Kerr's comment might have been a moment of frustration, perhaps aimed at motivating the player, while others believe it signals a more profound fracture in the locker room. Analysts are already theorizing about trade possibilities, with whispers of other teams preparing their offers should the situation escalate. The atmosphere around the Warriors has shifted from quiet confidence to a palpable sense of intrigue. While the team continues to train and compete, the undercurrent of speculation is impossible to ignore. Conversations about chemistry, leadership, and long-term strategy are now being filtered through the lens of this potential fallout. One thing is certain. Steve Kerr's rare public expression of discontent has fans and pundits alike holding their breath, waiting to see if this rumor will remain just that, or if it's the beginning of a seismic shift in Golden State's lineup. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.